Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's watch.
At this point.
Cody, take me back to that conversation. What did you think when you heard what Mary was saying there?
I didn't know what to think. I'm waiting for her just to express something to me, something, and at the time it just seems so vague. I don't even know.
I'm suddenly realizing, so we're at the tell-all, and I've been watching for about an hour, and they haven't talked about the catfishing. I think they're about to. And I am suddenly realizing that their reaction, if representative of their general reaction, is notable in that if my wife told me that she might one day just wake up and that I would one day wake up and just realize that she was gone, I would have wild emotions about that, and it would show. I would be shocked, I'd be terrified, I'd be confused, I'd be angry, I'd be concerned, I'd be hurt, I'd be crying, I'd be like, huh? It would be a panic for me. What are you, what's, no, what's happening? Why? What do you mean? But what we saw, and maybe it's just for the cameras, but hearing the way that they're talking about it, because they've been talking about it for a bit now, they're all, on the surface, I guess I was kind of being tricked into thinking that they're all being cool and nice about it, because they're not flipping out. But that shows that I think this illuminates a lack of connection. Because if they were truly married and truly sister wives and truly in a family forever, then they would flip out. They would beg for answers or get angry or something. There'd be the way that they're reacting. It's like, well, sometimes people just decide that they just move on. And what are you going to do? So either they want her to leave or they've wanted her to leave or they... But what I'm wondering now is if they aren't really connected, because you can imagine that being the case, right? The line that they say is that, or at least the way that they portray it, is that it's the same as any other monogamous marriage, except there's just 4 wives. It's the same. They're connected, and the sister wives bond is strong. It's not just sisters, it's like sister wives, right? And they wouldn't say they're like wives to each other, but it means something. It's such a big deal, right? Because, with your sisters, you don't necessarily live with them your entire life and through eternity and depend on each other, but they do. So it is remarkable how little reaction, and that might be felt by Mary. I was like, oh, well, whether she registers it consciously or was looking for it or not, fishing. I don't think she was fishing for it, but that she would say, oh, well, that's nice of y'all to not like jump down my throat when I said that I might leave one day, but you don't seem to really care that much. And thanks for giving me that flexibility. And maybe they're busted up on the inside, but I'd imagine, again, if for me, there's no amount of maturity and therapy that I could go through that would just make me have their reaction, all of them.
And I don't want to push her. She hasn't felt well for a long time. She hasn't seemed like herself for a long time.
When you say a long time, give me in the last year or since Mariah left, what?
To me, in my head, it's like 6 months. I don't remember exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. And we'll take his word for it. That probably coincides with the catfishing. I'm just going to take a guess. Who knows? It might have been longer or shorter. But the way that she talked about it, it did sound like it was about that time span. Mariah moved out 2 years prior. I don't know when they filmed the tell-alls, if it's like right after filming the show. I don't think so. I think they filmed the tell-alls after the season has been aired, and the season had been filmed months prior, typically, right? At least that's my assumption. And so I'm guessing that Mariah's moved out 2.5 years prior. So that empty nest thing, so I'm just trying to get a timeline.
I'm actually afraid to push too hard, because I've been asking the question a lot. What's wrong, Mary? What's going on? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't.
Okay, that's another angle to this, that Cody might deeply care and has been trying, but knows to not push because she's been saying, don't ask me, I don't want to talk about it. And I could see her doing that. Janelle gives off that vibe as well of, leave me alone, get away, don't bother me. And I think maybe even trying to convince themselves, both Mary and Janelle, that everything will be fine. But everything isn't fine, and it'll show in these bursts when it comes forward, like in infidelity, or if Janelle gets upset about something and then they have these brief moments and then all of a sudden lid goes back on. I will say that Janelle and Mary in therapy, and I'm really, and I have always been encouraged by their work in therapy. It's not like 90 Day Fiancé where they just have like 1 or 2 sessions. They seem to be legitimately in therapy, and occasionally it's being filmed. And the work that they do in therapy is fantastic. It might be frustrating to watch as an audience member, to watch it and go like, you're not addressing the issue. It rarely is. It's scary to address the issues, and it takes time. It's hard. So you can only go at the pace that the client is ready to go at. And I would say that it's commendable. I'm sure that they could choose not to be in therapy if they wanted to, right? And I don't know how much they're going, but I get the impression that, it's fairly regular. So Janelle and Mary were having conversations about bonding after perhaps never having bonded. It sounds like they were in conflict as soon as Janelle entered the family, and then they agreed to just agree to disagree or get along, but secretly disliking each other or always just being nice and polite, This season has seemingly, especially with the catfish thing, it seemingly has really revealed the cracks in the foundation, because if everything was how they've been portraying it, none of these things should be happening, and yet they are behind the scenes. And it's taken this long forever. It makes me now realize why everyone watched it. Because when I started watching the show, I'm like, why is this show so popular? Nothing really happens. and everyone's like, wait till the later. But I'm not even at season 14, so my God. Or is it season 15? I don't know. One of those seasons, the shit hits the fan, apparently. But it's already hitting the fan. It's flying. It's flinging everywhere.
It was about that time that the legal divorce between Cody and I had been made public. And throughout that month, all of us were getting bombarded with questions of what's going on.
So that makes it seem like they filmed last season's tell-all while filming this season. And it sounds like the divorce was leaked or something, because it's a matter of public record. So they had that out there, and then they get bombarded with questions from fans and from journalists, maybe even people around them, friends of the family, asking, are you leaving the family? And they can't answer those questions because of NDAs, I'm guessing, but also just because they don't want to leak one of the major storylines of the next season as they're filming it, which is that I'm getting a divorce. Because throughout this whole season, there's all these like teasers of like, I'm getting a divorce. And you're like, what? And then the rest of the interview is, but it's not a real divorce. I'm not leaving. I'm still totally in this marriage, and I'll be in this marriage forever. But it's for this and that, So it sounds like that was happening. And then that's when the catfisher got in the door. But she was saying that she was not actually leaving. But I wonder. So there's a possibility that divorce, because to us it's like, oh, well, the divorce was not just a legal thing. It was actually maybe a real thing. And that could be, but it also could have just been coincidental. But it is possible that either the impetus to get divorced was more than what she revealed it to be, which you could imagine, either emotionally or as she says, she's trying to protect the family from the catfisher, right? Or after getting divorced, it just opened a door of just like, I know we're not really getting a divorce, but I wonder what this, is this, how does this feel?
Did Mary divorce Cody? Why did Mary divorce Cody? And lots and lots and lots of comments to me cheering me on that I had finally left him.
Interesting. I think she's talking about fans, but I could even imagine, extended family that you also can't say everything to might say, I always knew he was a bastard. I'm so glad you left. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that, my second cousin saw it that way. I don't know. But at the very least, fans. And that opened a door for her. That's interesting. That would be interesting if a major element of this were comment sections, right?
This online?
Online, yeah. It was all social media. And I guess I just kind of got into this vulnerable state where I was open to friendships and relationships outside of my family.
This is interesting. So we do this in therapy, not practically, but as a visualization that I will use as well. We call it, there's there's various different terms for this, but the way that it works, generally speaking, is that you ask people to imagine something, and you tell them to, like, if I were working with Mary and she wasn't on a reality TV show, and I suspected that, or I just wondered, I just wondered what the answer would be to this, I would say, okay, I want you to just imagine that you are getting a divorce. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not saying anything. I'm just wondering what you would say or feel if you really just imagine that. I don't know if you'll say that it would be horrible or it would be great or neutral or interesting or scary or whatever. I'm just curious, because it's an interesting thought exercise that sometimes we don't engage in because we're afraid to go there in our minds. So I want you to really imagine what it's like to be divorced. Like, one of the things that this will come up with is when I have a client who is thinking about divorcing and they're talking with me about it, and I observe that they will make up a lot of reasons as to why they shouldn't get divorced. And sometimes that means that ultimately they will not get divorced in the end. But sometimes what it means is that they are not looking forward to the immediate consequences, but they truly want to leave. That doesn't necessarily mean they should. Divorce is complicated. But as a thought exercise, a lot of times I'll say, okay, so let's just imagine, you're in this limbo zone where you don't know what to do. Sometimes you're like, oh, I should stay married. And other days you're saying, I want out of this. So I just want you to imagine this fantasy world where we skip over the next 5 years. And you begin now with the divorce process, and you go through all the messiness, and you have to tell all the people, and you have to break your partner's heart, and you have to have those conversations with your kids. You have to separate the assets, and you have to go to the lawyers and work out the child custody. And let's say we're 5 years into the future, and you have been divorced now for 3 years, and you've been mostly stable with your ex and with your kids and your life and your finances. You're in a new living spot, and you've had 2 years now of the dust has settled, and you're settled into your life, however that is, whether it's good or bad, I don't know. But just imagine you're 5 years from now, and that says, would you take that opportunity to have that? And it's very telling when a client of mine says, yeah, I would take that in a heartbeat. Oh my God, that would be so great. And I'm using that as an assessment tool, but I'm also using it as a way for them to listen to themselves. Listen to your heart, Roxette. Roxette. Anyway, so for clients to hear themselves say that and listen to their heart is like, oh, so the only reason why I'm staying is I just don't want to go through the headache and the messiness of a divorce. Because people you'll get wrapped up in all these, well, what about the kids and what about the finance? And again, like I said, getting divorced is complicated. It's not always the best thing. And, sometimes people can pull out of the nosedive if they go to therapy, couple therapy, that kind of thing. But it says something because, if you told me that scenario, I would say, no, I would never take that deal. I don't want to get divorced. There's not a single thread of my being that wants me to get divorced. It's not a saying, but you know what I mean? So it's a way to think about it. So for Mary, it's possible that she inadvertently walked herself into a visualization where everyone assumed that, the fans assumed that she was divorced. And they talked to her that way. And she started to think, I'm being treated this way. This is interesting. What would it feel like to be divorced? And then that one thing leads to another, and she doesn't have a way of navigating. And instead of facing it and talking with a therapist or a friend or Cody or a sister wife, she talks with someone online. At the very least, she's cheating, and then at the worst, she's being catfished. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So it's December, and for me anyway, the holiday season is filled with fond memories. I know that's not true for everyone, but regardless of one's personal experiences, I think that December is a good time to get a nice cozy blanket and get cozy, that kind of thing, at least for those of us in the northern latitudes. And speaking of getting cozy, I suppose, one could say that therapy is a great place to get cozy. Cozy with ourselves, to wrap the warm blanket of therapy around us. And with the advent of online therapy, you can even stay home and go to therapy and sit on your favorite couch and be wrapped up in your favorite blanket. Well, one place you can find a therapist to do this with is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
Saying very flattering comments and expressing affection and love to me. And I fell for it. I started to love who he was portraying himself to be.
Looking back at how...
I don't know if they're going to get into it. I have a feeling they're not. But, if everything is on the up and up, this would really hurt Cody. I'm wondering if he's even heard it in this detail. Whether or not you like him or hate him, again, if everything's on the up and up, which I can't know, it would be totally acceptable and okay and normal if he was really, really hurt. Like, you fell in love with someone else. So there's that. And if that's true, I wonder what he would do with that. I've seen in the past, even with Mary, that he will lean in and try to reconnect. But it could also result in something else, because when I see couples go through this, sometimes the cheated on partner will clam up and give up and move on and feel so hurt that it just can't be repaired, and they don't try to repair it, Plus, he has other sister wives that he can depend on for closeness. So I wonder what we'll see with that dynamic.
Between you and this person, are you able to tell me anything about that?
Through the course of our phone conversations, he would tell me things like, I want you to call me and leave me messages and tell me, how you feel, or tell me, all these certain things. And he was specific about things that he...
Well, it sounds like she's leading up to blackmail, that he would threaten her by saying, or she or he, the catfisher, would release those recordings to humiliate her. Yeah, wow. That is some psychopathic shit right there.
Wanted me to say, and...
He wanted you to say on the voicemail that you were in love.
He wanted me to...
Yeah, I've been trying to assess the catfisher's disposition and intention, and hearing this, and I'm guessing we'll get more detail, there's a possibility that she was being targeted from the beginning, and she was being manipulated from the beginning, which of course will happen. Like that seemed to be happening with Yolanda in 90 Day Fiancé, which is rough. There are other versions of catfishing where there's another lonely person who will psychopathically lie to someone to get attention. Like if you watch 90 Day Fiancé with me with, what are their names? The guy from India with Jenny. I can't remember his name. But he catfished Jenny in the beginning. He had a different picture. And he wasn't trying to manipulate Jenny. I mean, I guess some people could make that claim, but it didn't look that way. It looked like he was lonely and he wanted to meet someone and he didn't think he was good looking enough. And then once he connected with Jenny over time, he's just like, I have to tell you, that's not me. That's a different picture. and then, 12 years later, I think they're still together. So I was kind of hoping it was that kind of catfishing where it was just another lonely person and they're not out to scam. But hearing this, that he would or she would, they would ask Mary to leave these voicemails knowing that they were going to use that for blackmail is, I mean, golly, and by extension, the other adults in this family and the other kids, they know this is, I'm sure it would be impossible for the kids not to find out about this, even the little ones. I mean, maybe they have a way to have the little ones not find out, maybe, if the kids are in schools that they have the ability to I don't know. That'd be really, really hard. The older kids, I'm sure, already know by this point, right? So it would be scary and concerning to everyone in the family. Like, what are you doing to yourself and all of us?
I talked to him for quite a while, but it was early on that I started seeing cracks in his story and things were not making sense. And he started pushing more and more for a more serious relationship at the same time as subtle threats.
It does make you wonder, though, what the end goal was. We haven't heard of requests for money or anything. We're hearing from her she wanted the relationship to be deeper. Well, what does that mean? If he wasn't willing to meet up? Yeah, so I'm kind of confused. So maybe the individual was interested in a weird, purely romantic or connection thing, but is also an abusive person. Because if this individual wanted, but if it was also a woman, you just think, well, who knows? Let's keep watching.
Hacker, being very technologically savvy.
What were the threats, Mary?
He would say things about his friend that you don't ever want to cross her. I eventually met her in real life. I never did meet him.
Well, that's interesting. Was that like a blackmail meeting or something? Because why would she meet up with the friend? I could also see Mary fawning, right? To meet up and say, well, if I get her to like me, maybe I'll be okay, I'll be safe, or I'll get to know the enemy or something. But that's probably why she thinks that the catfisher is actually a woman and that it actually was that woman. That often is the case, given a scenario like this. Yeah, wow.
Threats from these people.
Mm-hmm.
And you believe that they would destroy your family.
I was scared of what they could do.
It makes you wonder, and who knows, as to what she would worry would be revealed if a hacker were to hack into all of their phones or something. Maybe it's just a general worry that everyone would have, even though they don't have any salacious skeletons in the closet. But there's a pretty strong possibility that there's some, the amount of things that would qualify as a skeleton in the closet, like if one of them had cheated in the past and they never talked about it, or if one of them had sex with someone else prior to being married to Cody and they never told Cody or anyone about that kind of thing, or if someone was looking at pornography or was engaging in self-pleasure or something, or admitted to it, or if they were taking pictures of themselves in the shower or something. These kinds of things are pretty normal life things, but to them it could be very shameful and very alternating. It would be very shocking given their persona that they put forward. Although the more I watch of the show, the more the four of them seem paradoxically like just run-of-the-mill centrist Americans regarding their position on sexuality and LGBTQ and with their kids. Proof's in the pudding. We'll see if one of their kids happens to be gay or something, or queer in some way, how would they react? I imagine not well, but I don't know. But anyway, what if there's something that most of us would consider to be a skeleton in the closet, right? Something that all of us would be like, ooh, I don't want that out there. And that would potentially be like a lawsuit or a criminal case or something. And oh my God, like they have that hanging over my head. My goodness. And by the way, in situations like this, go to the police. At the very least, talk with someone in your life, because when you are isolated, that's how the victimizers want you. That's how the perpetrators want you. They want you to be isolated. They don't want you talking with others, and they particularly don't want you talking to the police. There's a good possibility that most of the time when someone's making a threat or they're trying to scare you, like, you have to send us money right away or else you're going to lose your house or something, 99.9% of the time, they're bluffing. They haven't hacked into your phone. They can't hack into your computer. They don't have that ability. And they're just saying that they can because they know it'll freak the fuck out of you, and there's no way for you to know if they have done it or not, right? They could just say that they've done it. So it's important that you don't isolate. It sounds like they effectively isolated her and had power over her because of that.
So you felt that these were not idle threats, that these people could act on what they said?
I felt very threatened by them. And then, there was times that I would be at a store and he would call me and start talking to me and then just say, "Are you at such and such store?"
Wow. Who knows what that's about? It could be that the individual or the team of individuals were just following her. Another possibility is that there's a weird private subreddit. It wouldn't be the first time this had happened, where there are groups of people that know each other through online forums or on Discord or something, and will conspire as a joke at first, but then later in reality to actually harass and manipulate and prank a famous person. So, that sounds pretty far-fetched, but like I said, it wouldn't be the first time. And the way that this can be particularly effective is that you have a team of people that often are very good at looking at clues, like, they've posted this picture on Instagram and I can see in the background that they're here, and I bet you they're on their way home right now because we got a timestamp on the photo or whatever, and they work together to pinpoint you, and then they use that information against you, that kind of stuff. Who knows? But like, what was that? The bling ring situation where they would look at posts and they would realize when people were not home, and then they would break into the famous people's houses and then steal stuff. Anyway, so wow. This is sounding worse and worse as it goes. Just terrifying. Just utterly terrifying. Because even if these individuals don't make a threat of violence or death, when you're faced with a situation like this, it is completely rational to suspect that could happen. Because you're thinking, you're willing to go that far. What else are you willing to do? And also, if you get pushed into a corner, you've demonstrated that you have rage and you don't give a shit. And you're completely willing to destroy me, and it's not much of a leap to think that you would kill me if I got in your way, right? So it is, and to believe that there are people out there that want to kill you and are making moves to kill you, it's just terrifying. So yeah, I feel bad for Mary. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.